I'm this guy that never believed in near-death experiences. And I woke up into this sea of pitch blackness. They're coming at me. And I mean, they're just screaming, hissing. And the next thing I know, I'm like going through the streets of heaven, like super fast. And all of a sudden, God says my name.
Douglas Kanaki, your story is absolutely amazing of what you saw in heaven. But not only that, honestly, your story needs to be a movie, and I'll be rushing to watch that movie. But also, you basically time traveled, which we're going to go into. I mean, it's like you time traveled 30 years. But let's go back to the beginning and what your childhood and your life was like.
Well, growing up was kind of difficult for me. So there were four kids, and my dad picked me out of the four kids. I felt like he was always taking his angers and aggressions out on me. And I mean, the first time I can remember getting the daylights just whipped out of me was I was 5 years old. And the only thing I did was, draw two pictures on the wall. And one was a happy face, one was a sad face. And, my dad comes home from work and he said, "Who wrote on the wall?" And I jumped up like excited because he saw that I did something, right? But he just grabbed me by my britches, took me into the room, pulled my pants down and just started whipping me with his belt. And I'm like looking at my mom and I'm just kind of going, why are you letting him do this? And, this is what I'm thinking in my head. And I'm just, like totally in shock at that point. And I think it was from that point forward that I kind of retreated into myself. So I didn't like really participate in a lot of things, just because there was always a fear there. And I just felt like I didn't communicate to people. And I definitely didn't pay attention in school. I was, it wasn't until I was in the sixth grade that my, or fifth grade teacher, noticed that, there was something wrong with me. And she noticed that I was writing things backwards and, I could barely read in the fifth grade. And I mean, that's how traumatic my situation was. And and I know a lot of kids go through a lot worse than what I did, but that was my life. And I mean, it was just constantly being badgered, not being told that I wasn't good enough, that I'll never amount to anything, and you keep doing that to a person over a period of time, and they're going to believe that, and they're just going to eventually just give up. And
I think the thing that amazes me about you, one of the things, Douglas, is that to go through all of that and to go through all that pain, and then you being such a kind guy, and even the way you treat your children. I mean, affirmation is important to you to affirm your children. Can you explain?
well, so going through all that pain and struggling with the fact that I never really had a father-son relationship, and then I made a promise to myself that I would not treat my kids the way I was treated, that I would treat them with love and respect. And and it was difficult for me because I wanted to get angry, I wanted to get upset, but it's like you got to hold yourself back. And it paid off in the long run to be that way. And because my wife and I've been married for 26 years. It'll be 27 in June. And it's our second marriage. But I always treat that girl with respect. And I mean, I try not to argue with her. I try not to, and I definitely don't say anything out of line to her because at any given moment, I want her to look at me and have respect. I want her to still feel those feelings for me, um, like the day we met. And so I've never cussed at her. I mean, I probably have her on this pedestal, and I probably shouldn't, but I do. And I think the world of her and everything that she's done for me.
Right. Well, when we get to more of what happened to you, of time traveling, and all I know is from reading your story that your wife is very, very amazing, and we're going to get to all of that. But tell me, okay, your background as far as going into construction.
Okay. So after I graduated from high school, I started working as a laborer. It basically a gopher. You go and get everything that your lead carpenter wants you to get. But I stayed with it. Within 4 years, I had my contractor's license. And then I don't remember the exact dates. Sometimes dates don't stick with me. But I have about 30 years of experience designing and building custom homes. And in 94, I went and got my real estate license. And that's something my dad told me, you'll never be able to accomplish that. You're you're not smart enough. But I developed this attitude. I'm going to do what it takes to make my life better and the people around me better. And I mean, if I couldn't figure it out, I kept going. I just kept pushing till I get figured things out. Same way with computers. I had to learn that twice. You know,
Right, right. Yep, that don't go ahead of the story. Yeah. But back to the you going into like construction and everything. At first, did you then work with your father
I did.
or?
My dad and I and my stepmom, we started this company, and we were basically what I was doing was framing all these houses, and it was supposed to be a split between the three of us. And we were building all these homes, and from start to finish. And I was watching him, and he was buying all sorts of nice things, and here I am just making a carpenter salary. And I went to him and I said, where's my share of the company? And he basically told me, you only own a framing business. And I said to him, I said, look, I said, that's not right. I said, that's not what I signed up for. And I mean, it totally upset me. And so I ended up thinking about it for a while, and I got in the truck, loaded all the tools in it, and drove over to his house and dropped off the truck and all the tools. And I said, I'm done. I said, I'm not taking any more abuse. And I walked out and never spoke with him again for, oh my gosh, 25, 26 years.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
during that time period, I tried to reconcile with him. He wouldn't even talk to me. And so I was just like, you're on your own. You got to do what you got to do to get by. And so I put myself through night school for architectural technology and construction management, and learned everything I could possibly learn about the construction industry. I mean, I've worked on concrete crews and framing crews and interior finish, and so I learned the whole spectrum of the residential construction. and and I absolutely loved it. I love the fact that I could get on my computer and I could design a custom home. And I even went to the point to where Pro CAD system that I use and had a materials editor side to it. So I went in and wrote like 600 some formulas in there. And so as I was doing my drawings, it was actually doing a materials takeoff. And if you did your drawings correctly, your uh, materials takeoff would be within 1 to 2% of accuracy.
Wow, how detailed. Well, okay, so then how is your construction business doing then? And
Well, okay, so I met my wife in, oh my gosh, let me think, 96, I believe it was. Um,
well, okay, now did you know Jesus at that point?
yes, I actually was going through. So when I stopped working for my dad, and I was probably 20 years old at that time, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, what would you think about going to church?" And I mean, I hadn't been, we were all Lutherans. And so he wanted to take me to a Baptist church. And I'm like, wow, a Baptist church. I said, this is going to be an experience, right? So we walked in there, and you got to imagine I'm got long hair. I have a dangling earring with a cross on it. And we rode in on our Harleys. And you can just imagine the looks that we got. So we walked in, and Vera was head of the youth in that church, and she was an absolutely amazing lady. She loved Jesus like I mean, you could just see it in her face. And she knew I was like going through a very difficult time, and I would imagine Scott had said something to her, but she kind of took me under her wing, and kept kept after me about coming back to church, and she knew I wasn't saved. She could just tell by the rough edges. And so it was probably a 6 month period, and I kept coming back and going to class. And so I was sitting up in the balcony one day, and um, you could just tell how the Holy Spirit was working on me. And I mean, it was just like this hello, I'm talking to you, and you could just feel him all around you. And all of a sudden I saw Vera, and Vera's like, do you think it's time, Doug? And I'm like, kind of going, time for what? She goes, time for Jesus. And so the next thing I remember, I'm walking down out of the balcony, and I'm walking down the aisle, and I'm all of a sudden saying this prayer about accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And I mean, you just don't experience something like that. Definitely not in a Lutheran church. And so, I mean, this is like totally foreign to me. And so it was like this big change in my life. And my family pretty much disowned me because of um, going to a Baptist church and not staying Lutheran. And so it was kind of rough. It was rough going. Um,
But your life changed, and we're going to go back to okay. So it was age 20, and there's something very significant about that, something very supernatural that we're going to get to later, and that even has to do with your heaven experience and time travel. So keep on sticking around, everyone. But okay, but now you finally probably felt you had direction in your life.
I did. I feel like I had a purpose, and like I don't know if I had like purpose, but I did know Jesus, and I did talk to people about it. But I wasn't like I shouldn't say I should say not driven. I wasn't um like today. It's not like today. Today is different. Um, but uh, So I got my first marriage. We were married for 18 years, and it was very rocky the last 8 years. Um, and through that whole time frame, never spoke with my dad, never spoke with my brothers, and I mean, it was a difficult situation to go through. Um, I just felt like you go through all this trouble, and I mean, uh, it was a hard walk, very very difficult. Um, I just felt like you just everything you tried, you just couldn't get ahead. You couldn't get to a comfortable spot. But things changed once I went through the divorce, and I was able to see my kids, which was important to me. Um, and I believe it was probably, yeah, 96 is when I met my wife, Diane. Um, I just remember, I can still remember to this day what Diane had on, and it was her smile that got me. That like if you've ever heard of falling in love at first sight, that was it. I mean, it does happen, and I it didn't happen for her because I was like showing up at J.C. Penney to um, ask her for help and finding clothes, and I dragged my son in there with me, and he's like, "Oh, brother, dad," you know. But she finally ended up um, uh, accepting going on a date, and we were actually chaperoned by Mark and Eloisa on our first date. So it was an unusual time, but we ended up getting married in June of '98, and I just absolutely love this girl, and she's just um, I don't know. She has such a special place in my heart, and in my soul. I mean, I just knew that girl was supposed to be with me. Um,
Now, how long were you married before you took that trip to Mexico that changed everything?
okay, so we got married in '98, June of '98, and that's when I started my construction business. And all I was doing at the time was like A to C type work, going and fixing things for people and basic carpentry stuff. And then I started uh, building homes. And so I took a business from, A to Z type work to where I was selling $3 to $5 million in housing, in custom housing. And then I also had the real estate company, um, to where I had 10 real estate agents working for me. So I was training those agents to list, to sell, take those clients and move them into new construction, and so that it would feed my custom home business. And so in October of 2006 is when um, everything kind of like fell apart. Um, so my wife and I decided to so let me explain what falling apart was. So I'm at the top of my game. I'm making, serious money at the time. Um, and so I would build us a house every 2 years, a brand new home, roll over everything, and just, you know, building the capital gains thing. And, we just uh, were doing really well. The house we lived in at the time was a 5,000 square foot home. It was a ranch on a full walkout. And I mean, it had the latest technology that you could possibly want. And so Di and I decided to take a vacation in Los Cabos, Mexico. When you pay off your timeshare, they give you a free week. So we went to Los Cabos, and it was probably the um, last couple days that we were there. We went into this little sidebar restaurant type thing, and it still sticks in my craw today that the waiter there is the one that gave me the meningitis.
Oh,
I mean, I don't remember like much of the vacation at all. I mean, I like remember one of the restaurants we ate at. I remember going to this sidebar. Um, uh, I remember meeting um, four guys that were on a fishing trip, and that's about it.
okay. So now, did you have any symptoms then, or when did
Oh,
the symptoms
it,
begin?
it meningitis has a 10-day incubation period. Um, so I probably contracted this the one of the last 2 days we were there. And so we get back to Fort Wayne, and I'm doing what I do, going out and looking at my jobs and making sure everybody's on the right page and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I started getting sick on a Wednesday. This was about lunchtime. And I mean, I'm getting like nauseated, and it's October, so I'm thinking, okay, it's just the flu. So, and I had no idea what meningitis was, never even heard of it. And so I go through all my appointments on Wednesday. I even went and worked out at the Y. And then I came home, and I said to Diane, I said, hey, I said, I'm not feeling good. I think I'm just going to go to bed. So I slept all night Wednesday. I get up the next morning and I tell her, hey, I'm still not feeling good. I'm just going to stay home. And I never do that. I don't care how sick I am, I go to work. And so I'm like sleeping all day. And for some reason, I got out of bed 11:30 Thursday night. And I go into the bathroom, and I get into the walk-in shower, and I'm like having troubles, like figuring out how to do things. Like nothing's making sense to me. And so I go to get out of the shower, and I slipped and I hit the floor like a ton of bricks. And um, and I'd managed to pull myself up on the vanity, and the mirror over the vanity it's from the top of the vanity to the ceiling. So you can see everything that's in the bathroom. And I'm pulled myself up, and I looked in the mirror, and I saw all this blood just running down the side of my face. I mean, it's like a lot. And I just remember the last thing I remember is saying, "Oh wow," in slow motion. I mean, it was like I don't know if you've ever been under anesthesia where
Yes.
you like warp out so fast, like everything goes black on you. And the weird thing about it, everything in the bathroom had no colors to it. The only thing that had color was the blood. And so the last thing I remember is just saying, "Oh wow." And I guess like the thud on the floor is what alerted my wife and youngest son Nicky. They come upstairs into the bathroom, and I'm still standing up, holding on to the French door in the bathroom. And they're like waving their hands in front of my face and yelling my name, and I'm already gone. I had no idea they were even there. So Diane is like losing it, and Mickey calls 911. EMT show up, and they're saying his vitals don't check out with concussion. And that, because that's what they were thinking because of all the blood. And the weird thing is I still had my clothes on when I went into the shower. That's how messed up I was. So they get me to the hospital. The first thing they ask my wife is if you guys have been out the country, and Diane says, "Yeah, we just got back from Mexico." Well, they did a spinal tap, and they check your fluid. And if your fluid's cloudy, then they got to run a strand check so they can find out which form of meningitis you have. And I think at the time there were like 4 different strands. So I had what's called meningococcal meningitis, which is the worst form of meningitis you can get. So the incubation period is 10 days. You have 24 hours to get antibiotics in you to survive. So the meningitis attacks the membranes around your brain, and your head swells so bad. I mean, it'll even push your eyeballs out. I mean, it's like crazy pressure, and the headaches are just incredible. I mean, it makes a migraine seem like nothing. And so I'm in a coma for 3 days. I'm 50 years old at the time. And so when I start to wake up, I can hear like people's voices, and I can hear the neurologist telling everybody, "Hey, everybody be quiet. He's waking up." So, and I'm kind of looking around, and I'm kind of like in a daze. Everything's like not making sense. So she wanted to ask me some questions, and the first thing she asked me, it says, "Do you know your name?" And I told her it was Doug. So you have to know my situation at the time. I looked like a stroke victim. This side of my face was just sagging. It had no movement to it. My right arm shook uncontrollably, and I lost the hearing in my right ear. So even today, I'm completely deaf on the right side, which you lose your center of balance when that happens in a rapid loss like that. The memory loss was incredible. So like I said, I was 50 at the time. I lost 30 years of memory. And when she asked me what year it was, I told her it was 1969. And everybody in the room was kind of looking at me because they know I have a bit of a sense of humor, right? And they're
Okay.
kind of
Yeah.
looking at me like, all right, come on, Doug, what year really is it? And I said, it's 1969. And then she asked me who's president. I said, Nixon's president. And so there were good friends in the room, Mark and Colleen, and Mark looks like my older brother. He has the dark hair and the black rimmed glasses. And I said to him, I said, Mike, I said, what are you doing here? And I mean, he's looking at me like, dude, you don't even know who I am. And so, and I said to him, I said, I see you're still dating your girlfriend, Candy. That was his girlfriend back in 1969. And I mean, it was just absolutely a bizarre time. And I had no idea that, I was a custom home builder or principal broker, none of that. And so the crazy thing is my daughter walks into the room, and I said, "Hey, Audia, how you doing?" And she hands me a CD. And I look at it and I go, "What's that?" She was, "A CD, Dad, that plays music." And I said, "No, they're black and about this big around. And, vinyl records." And she's like, "Dad, it's got your favorite band on it." And so I'm thinking like Rolling Stones or Boston or, something like that. And she goes, "No, it's Dave Matthews." And I'm kind of going, "Who's Dave Matthews?" And
Right. So you lost decades, and also you didn't even know like what technology and
no,
what and okay. So you knew your daughter, but did you know who your wife was?
no, I had no idea who my wife was. And so, I had no idea what cell phones were, flat screen TVs, garbage disposals, all the microwaves, all that stuff was like brand new to me. So the neurologist asked me if I knew this lady sitting next to the bed, and I'm looking at her, and I'm already shaking my head no. And so the neurologist tells me to come up with a name, and so I called her April, and my wife's name is Diane. First thing my wife says to me is, who's April? And I'm like going, I just woke up. I have no idea what's going on. I said, look, I said, you're a beautiful lady, but I have no clue who you are. And I mean, it was like these huge alligator tears running down her face. And I mean, she's like sobbing at this point. And and she had put together this huge prayer team, the people at work and, wherever she could find to have people pray that I would come back. Because all the data they have on people that come into the hospital that are unconscious, non-responsive, and septic, there's like very little data of survivors.
Right, because you had the very worst, and wasn't there like this scale of what, 3 to 15,
Well,
and three?
there's a Glasgow Coma scale from 3 to 15, and 3 is the worst, and that's where I was at. So they were basically preparing my wife that I was not going to make it. That, and even if he does happen to wake up, he's not going to be the same guy, and he's could be in a vegetated state the rest of his life to where you're just going to basically be his nurse for the rest of his time. And so for me to even and so like I couldn't form full sentences. My whole motor functions were just messed up, and like I couldn't walk, and all the senses in my body had gotten erased. So like hot and cold, how the wind affects you and you walk, just everything. Like you have 5 main senses in your body, and they create a harmony from working together. Like your hearing and your eyesight, they create a harmony so that you can have your balance and do what you want to do. Well, all my balance today is in my eyes. I have no center of balance.
But okay, but you don't know your wife, and so what happens after that?
Well, I
I mean,
spent 3 weeks in the hospital, and the whole time we're there, the first week I was in quarantine. The next week you're in intensive care, and the last week was them basically trying to teach me to walk. I had no ability to walk on my own. So they and during this whole time frame, I'm arguing with her, telling her, "You're not my wife." I keep telling her, "I don't know who you are," and I mean, she would get upset with me. I mean, just like she would tell me things that we did together, and I would have no idea what she's talking about. And so the last day where they put you in a wheelchair and they're taking you down the corridor to load you up in the car, and I turned to the nurse and I said to her, I said, "Am I going to be okay going home with this lady?" And she puts her hand on my shoulder, says, "She's a very nice lady. You are in great hands." So we get in the car and we're heading home, and like typical man, I'm trying to tell her which way to go. I mean, I don't even know what state we're in, let alone what city. So we get into our subdivision and we pull up onto this driveway, and I'm sitting back looking at the house, and I go, "Oh my gosh." I said, "You live here?" I said, "You must be loaded." And she just cracks up and she goes, "You built the place?" And I said, "I don't think so." I said, "I've never seen this place before." And so she's got to come around to my side of the car, and she opens up the door, and like I had to put my arm over the top of her shoulders because she basically had to walk me into the house because I couldn't walk myself. And I had to go through 4 months of physical therapy and cognitive because I had no cognitive. My brain could not figure out what the next move was if I had to. Um, it just erased everything. I mean, so like the first week I'm home and I could barely like stay awake for a couple hours at a time. I was just struggling, just sitting in a chair, trying to stay awake, maybe watching TV. And I just would be asleep in a couple hours. And the reason they had her watch me for 4 months was because a lot of patients die from aneurysms, blood clots, because of the amount of pressure that was on your brain.
Ooh.
So she had to keep constant care of me. Like she'd come over and shake me just to make sure I was still alive. It's that bad. And so after being home about a week, she comes in with my laptop and sets it down. And I looked at it and I said, "What's that?" She goes, "That's your computer." "No, your laptop. You work on it all the time. You like do your CAD drawings, your estimates on your homes." And I'm like, "Okay, so what's it do?" And so she flips open the lid, hits the power button. You know how they light up? And I said to her, "Oh, it's a TV." And she goes, "No, it's not a TV. It's your computer." And she goes, "What's your password?" I said, "What's a password?" And I had no idea what this thing was. And so, you know how it lights up and you got all them apps on your screen, and I'm looking at it going, I have no idea. So she basically had to teach me computer 101, what's a keyboard, what's a mouse, what all those little things on the screen are. So my short-term memory loss was so bad at the time that when she would take me and put me in the shower, I would wash my hair 5 times because I just forgot I did it.
Wow.
It was that bad. So you can only imagine what it was like for her to try and teach me what a computer was. So she'd have to sit down and she goes, "Now you remember what that is, don't you?" And we going, "A mouse?"
Douglas, it's not only like you, time traveled going back like 30 years, but it's almost like you were experiencing Groundhog Day too.
Yeah.
To having to do something over and over again.
It was absolutely so difficult on her. And for her not to lose her temper was absolutely amazing. She's an Italian lady, and
Oh.
you know how Italians are. They might
Well, I do because I'm half Italian.
So they have a little bit of an explosion once in a while. So,
oh, well.
but she was absolutely amazing. And she would work with me time and time again. And so she got me to the point where I was on the computer and I was looking at all the family photos. And so up until this point, this is just some lady taking care of me, right? She's just a girl that feeds me, wakes me up, puts my clothes on because I can't dress myself. And so I'm sitting there looking at all these photos and I kind of go, wow, she's in a lot of these photos. And I'm kind of going, why is she in these photos? I'm thinking to myself, why is this like nurse in the photos with me, right? She's like sitting in my lap and, smiling and having a good time. And I'm like, thinking about it, all of a sudden, it was like this huge rush of emotion just like filled my inner being. I don't know how to explain this, but like feelings of love and passion for her just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, and then it finally dawned on me that this is my wife. And so at this time, I'm still not able to walk. And it's about 2 months of being at home. And so I managed to get up and I'm like holding on the furniture and the walls and I get out to the kitchen and I finally tell her, I said, "I know who you are." And she's like looking at me and I said, "You're my wife." I said, "I just remembered you're my wife." And she's like laughing and just like, I don't know, you should have seen it. The tears were just running down her eyes, her face when she was so happy. And she was just like, and she put her hands on my face and said, "We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this." Mm. And so after 4 months, and so I'm sitting in my chair, and I'm dawning on me that if I don't get my act together, if I don't remember who I am, at this time I didn't even know who I was. I had no idea who I was. And I was like, if I don't get it together, I'm going to lose this girl. If I don't remember what's going on, who everybody is, what I do for a living, all this stuff. Because during this process, I remember I have 4 kids. So it's like, who's paying for all this, right? So I'm like sweating bullets at this point. And so after 4 months, she has to take me to work because I'm not allowed to drive. They took my driver's license away. And because if ET got out, I would never made it home. And so she takes me over to my office, and we're both crying like kids because she's acting like she's dropping off her first grader to school. And I'm like not wanting to leave her because she's the only person I really know. And so and she tells me, you got to go into the office and just do whatever, just try and figure something out. So she's dropping me off at the office, and she basically just tells me to go in and do something, try to figure it out. So I get in there, and you know how like I couldn't remember the password on my other computer, and she had an IT guy, which was my secretary's brother, come in and hack my computer, my laptop. So and they gave me a password of like 1 2 3 4, and I couldn't remember that. So I go in and get into my office, and I sit down behind my desk, and I'm looking at the computer, and out of reflex, I typed in my password, which was really weird, but I couldn't remember it after that. And I was just like, oh my goodness, you forget everything. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who I was, what I did. I had to do a lot of faking, like somebody come into the office and they'd know who I am, but I'm like, I have no idea who you are. I'm drawing a complete blank. And and some of these guys worked for me for the longest time, and I'm just like, having troubles. And I had a friend of mine, his name was Lee Lawson. He was one of my realtors, and he was the only realtor out of 10 people that stayed with me. And he was always calling me up and having a conversation with me. And Lee was a believer, and he passed away a number of years ago. But you would never know the things that that man did for other people. He cared about people unbelievably. He did things with the homeless shelter in Fort Wayne. He was a financial planner, and he took them from being in a negative to a positive cash flow system, and didn't take a dime for it. Just a super guy all the way around. And he was always talking to me, and he was like, do you remember me yet? And I'd be like, maybe. So, but it took me, oh my gosh, better part of 2 years, even longer than that, to get maybe 80% of my memory back. And I went through a real dark time because I knew something happened to me. And I never said anything to anybody about it because I was having such a hard time dealing with it myself. The emotions that I was going through was so during that period of 4 months of being home with my wife, I would say to her on occasion, why in the world would God send me back to this hell? And she would look at me kind of odd, like, why would you say something like that? And, and the first time I said it to her, she broke down and cried because she was upset that I was complaining about being here. But I never explained everything that had happened. I kept that to myself because I was upset with God for sending you back to this place. I mean, you can't go from being in a perfect place back to what I call hell, because there's so much misery and wicked stuff going on in this place. It was very disturbing to me. And watching the TV and the news and all that just made it all the worse for me.
Right. Now, what you saw at that point, your wife still did not know about your near death experience and seeing heaven, and she didn't know anything, right?
She had no clue. I mean, I probably didn't say anything to her about it. Maybe 4 years later, 5 years later, maybe. Yeah. And I'm still wrestling with it myself, because I'm just thinking, why would God pick me? Why would God pick me? I'm just a guy. I'm this guy that never believed in near-death experiences. I never believed that stuff took place. Right?
Wow.
I'm this guy that all I did was just go to church. I didn't want anybody to bother me. I just wanted to succeed. Was my goal in life. But God had other ideas. So he took me from being a very successful businessman to losing everything. I lost my custom home building business, the principal broker. Business got so bad in Fort Wayne that I ended up closing up shop and moving to South Carolina because they had work here. And I was not happy, not a happy camper at all. I mean, how do you lose a business that you started from doing A to Z work and you build it up to where you were selling $5 million worth of housing every year, and then go to nothing? I was, and I know my wife was just like, dude, what's wrong with you? And so after that 4 or 5 years is when we sat down on the couch and I told her, I said, I need to tell you something. I said, I've never spoke to anybody about this. I have kept this to myself, and I need to talk to you about it. I need to bounce this off of somebody because it's bothering me really bad. So I told her, I said, when I was in my coma, I woke up, and I woke up into this sea of pitch blackness, like a black you've never seen. I mean, it was absolutely eerie feeling. And I'm just like hovering, just like looking around, nothing's going on. And I'm thinking, why am I here, right? And so next thing I notice is something's moving off in the distance. And I'm looking, and they're like coming at me. Whatever these things are, they're coming at me. And the closer they get, the bigger they're getting. And I mean, they're just screaming, hissing, and flames are coming off their bodies. And I'm just like terrified at this point, because I mean, they're like so close, I'm like, what's going to happen next, right? And all of a sudden, this voice said to me, do not be afraid, I'm with you. And the unbelievable thing about that is I knew that voice. I knew exactly who that was. And as soon as God said that, it got absolutely beautiful. I mean, it got brilliant. The foundations of heaven just showed up. And I mean, this heaven is massive. It's huge. And to this day, I still cannot tell you what the colors are. I can see them, but I can't tell you. I don't even know how to describe it. And
Wow, so you can picture these colors, but you could, because I've heard other people say the same thing. You could look at one of them and say, well, that's not a blue. It's not a.
it,
I,
it was like it was translucent, but yet it was solid. And it had all these different colors to it. And so, like the next thing I know, I'm like going through the streets of heaven, like super fast. And I'm like looking, from a builder standpoint, I'm looking at all of these buildings and I'm going, wow, this is amazing, And so the next thing I know, I'm sitting in a grassy knoll and I'm just sitting there. I'm like going, oh my goodness, what's next? And so I did some research on what I think this area is. And so I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden God says my name. And he said, Doug. He said, do you understand what your choices make and what they do and where they go? And I'm like, I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I mean, God's talking with me. And so all of a sudden this pond appears, just comes out of nowhere. And you can hear the water moving, and you can see the mist moving across the top of the water. And I'm like looking at all this stuff. And then he drops a pebble in the pond. And he says, you see those ripples? He says, those ripples are your choices. And they just keep going. They keep touching wherever they go. And he says, that's how you affect people. That's how your choices affect people. And then he said to me, I'm going to show you 3 different choices. And he showed, they were so vivid. It was like a movie, like it had emotions attached to it. Like you could feel the feelings as he was showing me these different scenarios of what my choices would be. And, he told me that these aren't necessarily going to be your choices. I'm just showing what your choices could lead to. And then all of a sudden he said to me, I'm sending you back. And I'm like, I kind of like was in shock that he was going to do this. And I pleaded with him. I said, look, I don't want to go back. I said, this place is absolutely amazing. I said, I've never felt such peace and love in all my life. I said, this is like the best thing that's ever happened to me. And he said to me, he says, I've got something for you to do. I'm sending you back. And that's when I woke up in the hospital bed, and I could hear the voices and, people talking. And it was just like something you just can't ever get over. You can't ever forget, what God said to you.
now, did you see his face?
Never saw his face, but I did see like a silhouette.
Okay.
I
And now
saw
did
him
you?
standing there. And so I have been read the Bible all the time. And so God resides in the third heaven. That's his place. That's his home. And I was reading because I'm trying to find out where I was at, what part of heaven was I in? And I feel that since I was in this place that was like absolutely beautiful, that's where the Garden of Eden's at, is in the third heaven where God's at. And so I was just, I've been trying to figure out, where was I? Was I in God? I had to be in God's place, in his residing home, because of of the surroundings and how beautiful and peaceful and loving it was. Um, so I just have been wrestling with different things. And I know there are other things that happened while I was there. Um, and I know just before he sent me back, I was standing there talking with somebody, and I still cannot remember who it was. I mean, it was. I know I was having a conversation with somebody, and that's when God said to me, He said, "I'm sending you back," and my body was like it was shining, but not solid. It was like um, I don't know. That's something I can't explain either. I just can't put a finger on what it was. But the intensity of God's love is so incredible. I mean, it's all the way through you. It's all around you. You can't like get away from it if you wanted to. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And so I probably walked, oh my gosh, the last 12 years have just been um, a roller coaster. Because I was still not happy being sent back. I was not um, sharing my testimony with people. I was just like stuck, basically stuck. I was broken because of my family past, just all those different things that you go through. You get in a place where you just don't care, basically. You just, doing life. And especially, like losing a business like that is like losing a kid because you build it, it's like building the best home you've ever built. And, you just know the craftsmanship is there. And so I just, and we were going to Elevation at the time. I think we've been going there for like 9, 10 years now. And we were serving on the greeting team. So, every other Sunday, my wife and I would be there greeting people at the door. And so my wife is very observant. Um, she sat me down maybe 3, 4 years ago, and she said to me, I'm very upset at you because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And she goes, I can still tell you're upset. You're not passionate about telling people your story. You're just, not feeling it. And so she said to me, she says, do you know how special you are? And I told her, I said, no, I have no idea how special I am. And she said, look, she said, God picked you out of millions of people that die to send back and do something for him. She goes, you're chosen. He chose you out of millions of people to do something for him. And like a typical man, you don't accept, constructive criticism right away. So I chewed on that for a while, and it finally dawned on me. Yes, she was right. And so I completely changed my attitude, or I should say God changed my attitude. And I have shared my story with, oh my gosh, maybe 150, 200 people. And I mean, like, I always know when God wants me to talk to somebody. It's like the atmosphere changes or something. And he actually tells me, you need to talk to this person. You need to talk to them.
Well, there's like power when you're giving your testimony. Now, there's something I just want to also bring up because you were upset that the Lord brought you back too because you felt rejected by
Yes,
God, just like the same kind of rejection from your father, correct?
yes, yes. Yeah, I felt that emotion was constantly haunting me. The one that my dad put in me, that you'll never be good enough, you'll never amount to anything, and so that's what I felt when I got sent back. Like, wow, God feels the same way. Like I'm not good enough to stay in heaven, and so I had a very warped, um, I don't know, analysis of how things are, and it took me a long time to get through that. And and I know the devil gets in your head and he messes with you, and he just he puts things in there, and you have a hard time battling it sometimes. And uh, so I mean, it's very important that I read the Bible, that I dig into it, that I find out different things that happen to me, and I'm like, you know, and I've even thought about going to seminary to be a minister, um, but it's expensive. It's kind of expensive, but I don't know.
Well, you know what really strikes me too, Douglas, is that you said when you were in heaven, you really experienced his love.
Hmm.
And yet, though, then you felt the rejection when you came back. But it seems to me that when you finally said yes to the purpose that God has for your life, that you finally actually then did receive his love into your life.
Well, okay, it kind of like set me free. Okay, because when a child's been traumatized, and he carries that with him all through life. And it doesn't matter how much counseling you've gone to, that is still there, but it's how you respond to it what makes a difference. And so I'm fortunate enough that I have a father in heaven who showed me the difference. And I mean, he basically, everything you do is on his time frame, not on ours. So I had to like go through all these different events to finally get to the point to where you understand what your purpose is and what you're here for. And so when I got saved and I was 20 years old, you know, you don't really have like a purpose. You're saved, you're excited about being saved, you're excited about knowing Jesus, but your purpose then is to share the gospel. But it's different today. I mean, it's like I've lived it, and I've lived something that very few people get to experience.
Now, when you think about okay, when you lost all those decades of memory, did the Lord ever show you why you were brought back to 1969? Do you?
Well, my conclusion to that is, so when you first get saved, you have a passion, a fire inside of you about talking about Jesus. And I think the whole reason he sent me back at 20 was because he wanted me to remember what you first feel like when you know Jesus. And I mean, um, it took me the longest time to come to that conclusion. Because and I've talked to other men about them having the same problem that I had about not having a father-son relationship. And it's really difficult for them to get beyond that. And a lot of them have experienced the same abuse and what have you that I had. And you have to get to this place where you stop thinking about your pain. You stop thinking about everything that you went through and start pondering about the other person, because that other person is trapped. That other person is broken, and he or she is stuck. They don't know how to get beyond what they're, experiencing. And I mean, I'm like so lucky to be able to sit here and go, I'm more worried about that other person than myself. You need to start thinking about the other person. What is that person going through? Why are they acting like they're acting? And, why do they do what they do to, and a lot of it has to do with what they've been through. And, so it's really important to me that I want to understand what other people are trapped in. So it's kind of difficult at times.
Now, there was also, well, so many different things. I'm thinking of just hearing your story, and it just makes me even more hungry for the Lord and more hungry for to go back to my first love with the Lord. But there was something else too, Douglas, about when you were experiencing like the beast that was in you,
Oh,
or the. Can
that
you
was
explain that?
so. That was probably during the 2 years of recovery, getting my memory back. So, and I told my wife numerous times that I was innocent, that I had no idea what she's talking about. And she would look at me and just kind of like tell me, no, you're not. And I'm like, yes, I am. And so I was at this place, and all of a sudden, like this, I felt like somebody was there, but there was nobody there. And it kept happening, and it was not a good situation. It was not a good feeling. And I would like go to sleep, and all of a sudden, like this dark figure was there. Like it was haunting me. Like it was telling me that I'm a part of you. This is you, what you're experiencing. And I like fought it for the longest time. Like I did not want nothing to do with this. And I would not want to go to sleep, because it was worse when I'd go to sleep. And it was just like a haunting, like it was there all the time. Like I could feel the energy of it around me. And I mean, this went on for months, and I couldn't talk to my wife about it. I mean, everybody thought I was nuts as it was. And if I said something about this, I mean, she would be like, dude, what's going on with you? And so I had to keep this to myself. And I'm just wondering whether I was like losing it. Like, am I ever going to be me again, normal? And I'm still not. So I go, oh my gosh, for the longest time. And the next thing I understand that this dark thing that's been after me was my old nature. And it was trying to merge with me. And I mean, it was an absolute struggle. I can't tell you the battle. And it was constant. Just, it's like how Satan's after you every day. Like he wants you to fall, he wants you to stumble, he wants you to make an idiot of yourself, because you sinned, you did something bad. And I mean, it was just relentless, just a constant badgering. And I just remember waking up one day and I was like, I'm different. It finally happened. And so I have my new nature and my old nature. And it was nice to be innocent for a while.
Right, and I found it interesting because in your book, which everyone has to get because it's going to be a movie. It's just definitely going to be a movie, and I'll have it in the description. But it's just interesting because you experienced heaven, and in heaven we are sinless.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I could see why you would then say to your wife, "See, I'm fine." But then it's like the realization of, but now you're set free because you know what Jesus did for you. He died,
Yeah.
on the cross, on the tree to take our sins away.
It's did a some research on how Jesus died, and that was the most cruel and corrupt death there ever was. No human being could ever go through what he went through. I mean, oh my gosh, and just the scourging alone, where they took this whip that had all these tails on it with jagged pieces of metal or whatever, and thrashed his back with it. And I mean, it would just rip flesh out of your body when they pull it away. I mean, oh my goodness, yeah, it was brutal. And
Yeah, he
and I
did, and he.
and being a carpenter, and I have shot myself with nails in my hands, and and I mean, that's nothing compared to what they drove through him. I mean, it's like a railroad spike that they nailed him to the cross with. And, oh, it's just your whole body cringes when I think about that. Um,
We have no idea how much he really loves us.
yeah.
And for those who are watching, some of you have no idea how much he loves you. But Douglas just described it. For him to take that pain for your sins. Douglas, do you have any last word for those who are watching?
Well, the one thing that I had listened to, I can't remember the preacher's name, but he talked about Jesus's death, and his doing what he did was to glorify God. He did everything to glorify God, and so that his death, we could actually have a path back to God. And I can't express enough how I feel about people that have no idea what salvation is. I mean, they need to know what's going on, because if they don't ever find out, they're condemned anyway. They need to find out. They need to make a choice, and I hope it's the right one. I have 3 boys that need to make a choice, and my wife and I, we pray about them every day. We try to keep it in God's hands that'll happen. But it's on my heart quite a bit.
I just think of there's so many promises that the Lord has given us and has given you, Douglas, and He said He perfects that which concerns us, and He loves your children even more than you do, and I'm just believing that He's sending people, sending them dreams because He wants all to be saved,
Sure.
and he it's I just trust the Lord that he will get through to them, and for those who are watching, that he'll get through to your family, and for you who don't know him, that you would ask Jesus into your heart and confess to him that you are a sinner, and he will change you, that and you will tell him, and that you would tell him, you know what, I believe that you died and that you were rose from the dead for me,
Yep.
and just watch your life change. It's absolutely amazing.
And he would have done it for one person. And that's what's so beautiful about it. He would have done it. That's why they talk about how the shepherd leaves the flock to go find the lost. And I mean, it's an amazing thing to go through. I mean, to be just somebody in the world and you find Jesus. I mean, your whole life is going to change. I mean,
Amen. Dean's heart stopped beating, and he was shocked by who he saw in heaven. Click the video to watch now.